Hello and welcome back everyone to Rabbit Hole Stories. Today with me and the wonderful Marc from the Netherlands. Marc, how has your day been so far?
My day actually is relaxed. It's calm. My night was not that not that good, but I managed to get through the day as well. So I'm good. I'm chilling. It's almost it's going to 7. So I'm still fine, and that's okay.
That's nice. That's nice. You were actually introduced to me when we had Bram on, and I've then connected to you on LinkedIn. I've been following you there as well. Before we get into your rabbit hole story, what does your day to day look like? Like, what do you work? Are you in the industry, or how do you contribute to Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, I'm basically 100% in the industry. So with my company, we have a Bitcoin and financial education platform. So that's what we do every day. It started growing when I was traveling the world. So me, my wife, and my beautiful daughters, we were traveling the world for quite some while. We were traveling through South America, Central America, Southeast Asia, Africa. So while we were traveling, I started to make that career change, and it became crypto unseen because I saw lots of my friends and family members, they were losing some money through the crypto shitcoin casino. So I thought, if I now create a company and I call it Crypto Unseen, I show you what you have to see, what you can see yourself. And people still think, because of course I could have named it Bitcoin Unseen. However, then people that are actually in need of the most help, I thought I might not reach them. So that was for me an easy name. And then the slogan is Bitcoin and financial education. And it started growing ever since. And now that I'm back in the Netherlands, it's even more easy to grow, because lots of Dutchies need a lot of help with regard to the financial system, to understand it, and to then also find a financial instrument to save their capital and their economic output in, what of course is called Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think crypto is a trigger word for a lot of the maxi pads, but if you actually start speaking to normies, you do realize they don't know the difference. They still associated everything in one basket. So, you kind of have to play the marketing game there a bit to get people on.
Definitely, if you would know how much people I have introduced into Bitcoin, that in first glance either were against Bitcoin and crypto altogether, so they were just a little bit older. They listened to my podcast, the Dutch podcast, where I was just explaining financial markets, and they were only interested in me because I was not talking about Bitcoin. Then they became a member, and afterwards, of course, because they took me a little bit more seriously, because I was able to explain how the financial system worked, now they became interested in Bitcoin. And I also attracted people that have either lost money in crypto or were interested in crypto altogether, and then because of me are now more interested in Bitcoin. So I think that indeed, if you can call it a marketing game, and it's basically using the words that they still use in their own language. That's how you connect, anyways. So I think that was an important part of the beginning, at least.
Yeah, definitely. So when we're already there, like what you're doing and stuff, what's your rabbit hole story? How did you get involved in Bitcoin? And you can do this as long or as detailed as you want.
Yeah, well, it's a long time ago. So, and of course we've heard so many stories about this. And for me, it was not that different. I was introduced into Ethereum, actually. I think it was like 2017 or so. When that was probably what I was working. I was a workaholic. I was working in a startup. We were working with 3 or 4 guys, and we were growing like crazy. So we were doing actually very, very well. And we grew the company to like 50, 60 employees. And then one of the co-workers came to me, and she said, it was her, she said, hey, we are making lots of money at home with Bitcoin and Ethereum. And Bitcoin is a little bit quote unquote dead, is what she said. And Ethereum is going to the moon right now. And I was like loving her outside of my room. And I was like, yeah, I don't buy that. If it's too good to be true, it's almost always too good to be true. So that was the first time that I heard about it. I think I bought something and sold it almost instantly, like 4 or 5 weeks later, when I had like 40% profit or so, like a pure fiat mindset. And then I forgot about it. And then later on, I think it was more like going into like 2019, I came across some type of spiritual mentor, and he was talking about the next wave of wealth. And he used all types of words that resonated with me because I was also in my own spiritual journey. And so I heard a lot about those things. I think I paid like $2,000 or so to someone in New Zealand. And he was explaining me about the energies and about all that stuff, and that it was like Bitcoin and crypto that was taking and soaking up all that energy and was creating that new world wealth. I think that was part of the narrative. Well, I still thank him for that, because that was the first proper introduction into seeing this from a different angle. And being I call myself in Dutch a leer junkie, so a study junkie, a learn junkie. So whenever I get introduced into something and I put a little bit more capital in it, I'm going to study it myself as well. And that was the part that that was the moment thought I actually got it. So I had a portfolio of 40% in Bitcoin and the rest in all kinds of shitcoins. And it took me up to the bull market in 2021 that I actually came across some maxis and some more toxic energy. And even though it was toxic, I always loved that type of energy, especially if there is some truth in it. And then I got to learn through Twitter. I learned, okay, this thing, Bitcoin, is something different than crypto. So I started to buy some books. I started to study it more and more, and eventually I was able to I think from that moment on, I was converting it gradually, then suddenly all into Bitcoin. And yeah, I do believe that me traveling the world in that same period was actually also a very important factor of getting to understand money in the first place. Because of course, if you travel through the global south and you convert your hard-earned euros for inflated currencies everywhere, you start to really think about what you have read in economics, right? You can read about inflation all day long, but if you're actually in those countries and you are converting your euros, and you some way somehow are way more richer than everyone there, that at least got me into thinking. And so in that same moment, because I always like to talk about vertical growth and horizontal growth. Since I'm always learning and studying and reading books, that's vertical growth. That's actually a little bit like closed-minded, going to really in deep. And if you go more on a spiritual journey and you decide to like travel the world with your kids and your wife for 3-4 years, it's more horizontally, because there are no books around. We were just traveling, doing trails in Peru and Ecuador and all that stuff. And I think that created some mind space for me to actually understand what was happening in the world. And then with everything together, the money part, the inflation part in all those countries, the Bitcoin and crypto journey, suddenly I started to have like time, energy to actually study this part. And yeah, being me, I was of course ordering books. And then of course you don't have to tell me a lot more if you read Saifedean's books and all the others. It's becoming more clear what money is actually all about. And then then to me, you come back to that part of that spiritual growth. If you are like connected to the hard place, it's very difficult if you read all that stuff to keep shitcoining, to do that zero sum game actually. And then you see that Bitcoin actually has a role to play in this world. And then I think, okay, if I then have some type of purpose, then I should probably combine it with Bitcoin and make sure that I have fun doing it. And that's actually my rabbit hole story in a nutshell.
Did you used to work in like finance or like product management or something before at the startup, or what was your background there?
No, I was sales manager. So I was in the first, like I said, it was a startup. So we were with the four of us. So I had to do sales myself, and we were with only 4 people. We were a small company, and we were like trying to challenge the bigger companies. So we had to do the hard kind of sales. So it was actually like hard sales. But then if you are a little bit more successful, of course, you hire some people and you grow into the next part. So I became a sales manager. And after we grew further, I became the CCO of the company. So I got to create a whole network, me being that commercially active person. And after we did that for a while, we were very successful. I thought it was time for myself to continue my journey as an entrepreneur. and I started to help bigger companies in the Netherlands with their sales strategy, and also to train the sales reps in those companies. So that was my own first company. So I was all about creating value, about selling, and um, spending it on shit. So literally the beginning phase of money, I really understood well. So I was really good in creating value, creating economic output. But how to store that energy, how to store that economic output, that was an all different question. And that was only later on. I do believe, for one reason or another, that I felt the link with money, because I was able to make money. But no, I wasn't in finance. I did not actually study economics in depth. I did not knew about Austrian economics. I did not know. Actually, I did not know anything. I didn't even know that we have lived on a gold standard, for example. It's I all read that later on.
Interesting. I think that this is a similar journey a lot of people go through, who end up in Bitcoin. They very rarely, get, whether it's Austrian economics, economics in general, right away, and it's always a personal touch point. But you mentioned that you traveled a bunch with the family, and you've experienced these places. What was, like, in your opinion, the worst place where you went where you're like, holy shit, they really need Bitcoin here, looking back now? Is there any particular place on Earth
Yeah.
or any country that comes to mind?
Yeah, what comes to mind is Dominican Republic. What
Oh,
you actually feel is, it's an island, of course, but it's a rather big island, and the government there doesn't care. They actually don't care. And if you talk to those people, they inherently know that that they cannot trust the government. But they are so outgoing, they're so nice, they're making so many jokes. But I tried to talk to them about Bitcoin, but their energy, their way of thinking, that leads them more into crypto and shitcoining. Whenever they have, even after they have met me, and they see, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He seems relatively successful. He seems to know what he's talking about. They they like it. They like the way I explain it, and then even they enjoy that type of energy. They somehow, it's a gambling nation, I would say. So on the sides of the roads, you see all those, like, little, how do you say that in English? There's little kiosks, where you can buy lotteries, for the lottery tickets. You can buy lottery tickets, and I know that they don't have money, and they are still always buying those lottery tickets. So if you then ask me, like, who is in the most need of Bitcoin, I would say over there. If they, for whatever reason, are able to change or shift their mindset a little bit into a slightly lower time preference, and because they have so much value to give, there grows so much there in the ground, right? It's like it's so green. There's so much. There are so many beautiful colors. It's the right atmosphere to live in, actually. If definitely, if you like the sun all year round. I think that if over there, if they could shift their mindset from gambling to more like a lower time preference kind of energy, uh, Bitcoin would make a lot of difference over there. And keep in mind, they have very high inflation. It's a very poor nation as well. So I think Bitcoin would be, let's say, if they would have a president like in El Salvador, like Bukele, then that would probably change a lot over there. Yeah.
I think this is a common thing if you travel the world and you get to see. So I've also been to Argentina once, and it wasn't as crazy in the, like, 250% inflation range, but you were already at 30 to 60% when I was there. Um, and they understood Bitcoin. They got the value proposition, but they all told me, like, listen, if we want to make a money premium, we trade Tether or like a stable coin or something, or we get cash, physical cash in US dollars, and you have like the black market and the gray market with the two different exchange rates. So it's interesting to see that they have the knowledge of understanding Bitcoin, and I think a lot of people do, also over here in the West. But it's just that tangible, real world use case where they go, yeah, it just doesn't make sense for me to, to wait the long or to play the long game and wait it out. Rather, I'll do the gamble, and if I get lucky, I have
Yeah.
enough to maybe put in Bitcoin. And if not, well, shit hit the fan, and I'll just need to get up the next day.
Yeah, like they did not care about like 30% in a year or 50% in a year. They do not care about that at all. And they still had, even though after I explained them, they were like more like, yes, but if I can gamble on a shitcoin and it goes times 10, I'm way more happy. So it's the fiat mindset is entrenched there as well, as is the gamble mindset. So those two together, of course, are a little bit dangerous, especially if you are living in a high inflationary environment with a government that doesn't care. Yeah, you see lots of unhealthy stuff over there on the streets and in various places. But that being said, though, to be really fair, they it's not that they like want to be saved or so. They feel really, really happy. They enjoy life even more so than lots of people in the West. So it's not that I think they need savings or so. I just hope um, that whenever they have the ability to adopt it, that they will choose for Bitcoin and not for the shitcoinery, simply because of the fact that we all know how it ends.
Mm.
And in the other countries where I've been, because I could name a bunch of other countries as well, because there was high inflation in all those other countries. Um, but there was more economic activity over there. So
Mm-hmm.
you could say you could even gamble a little bit more because you would be able to make a little bit more money the day after. And in those areas where I was, you had to make money one day, and sometimes like 4 or 5 days later, there's no work. There are not enough tourists, or there's not enough economic activity to live from. So especially in those situations, I think you have to have a little bit more like out-zoomed kind of mentality, zoomed out mentality, and to store your wealth in something that's a little bit more strong and a little bit more stable. Not in the form of a stable coin. Of course, you can use stable coins as well. But for the upcoming 2 months, yeah, store a little bit of your wealth in Bitcoin. So I've tried it over there, and I think if we would go there and we have like a small team, because I was on my own, like 3 or 4 other guys, that perhaps speak the language, Spanish a little bit better, or are more from around, are like literally born over there together with me, then you can create that type of vibe that actually attracts people. And now it was like that crazy dude from the Netherlands that was trying to sell something, right? Sell Bitcoin, even though I was not selling Bitcoin, but that might be how they perceived it. So yeah, I do agree. I haven't been in Argentina yet. Did you feel in Argentina that that people actually understood, because you said it, like did they actually understand the value proposition of Bitcoin? Like
Mm-hmm.
in like
So they understood it. The only issue was they told me, like, listen, I don't have five or hang on, did I say 4 or 10 years? I think I said 4 years. I think I went with a halving cycle, more or less 4 years. And they told me we don't have 4 years to save. Like, I can't put away like $1,000 for 4 years, and if the 4 year cycle applies, people could believe in it or not. It could be 10K or something. Um, Simply because I need to live now, and I need to, pay my bills. I need to do these things. So I need to use something that I can spend immediately. And obviously, the more, let's call it, established people in society there, so they maybe have a few businesses, they maybe even also do international trade, they definitely had some savings in Bitcoin. But it's not, hardcore Bitcoin stackers who have like a auto invest plan or something. It was just, we have a portion. This is our absolute last resort. But normal people, they got it, but it was simply, we don't have the time to wait that long. We need the returns now. So that's why
yeah.
they started doing the shitcoining stuff. And lottery stuff was also quite popular there. You may be lucky and win something. So there was a lot of that going around. But I did not have to explain to them why inflation is bad, for example, or something like
No.
this, or the devaluation of money. It's just they simply told me, we don't have the time.
Yeah, because this is so interesting, because that's, I think it's very important to get that word out, because I was traveling in so many countries, and yes, indeed, like I fully agree. They actually understood inflation better than most Westerns. That said, though, if I then was explaining Bitcoin, it's not that they instantly got like, okay, that's my savings tool then, or that is going to save me. They were still like, yeah. So there's still lots of education involved as well. Because I still remember one time I was in Ecuador and I was invited in a family's home, and this dad was asking me about my Bitcoin and financial education platform, and he was like, "You tell me about it." I can remember that I was explaining him and asking questions because I know how to explain, I know how to educate. That's my job. So I know it's not only me sending, it's me asking questions, let them get there, meet them where they are, and then help them a little bit with a little bit more knowledge. So we did it for a full hour, and I can still remember his first question afterwards. He was saying, "Okay, yeah, well, this has all been very interesting, but I'm not going to buy Bitcoin. I'm more interested in Ethereum. Can you tell me more about Ethereum?" Right? And so it almost seems like even though he understands inflation, he does not really understand what the difference is between Bitcoin and Ethereum, even though I was trying to explain it very, very easily. So us thinking that everyone will magically adopt Bitcoin whenever a hyperinflation occurs, I don't think that that's actually going to happen. No, I think we have some work to do. Let's keep it at that. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I observed this with friends over here in the West. Like I literally had this conversation this weekend where a friend of mine was like, "Oh, I need to check my bank account and I might need to use my credit card because I did some overspending." I was like, "Well, okay, let's get down to the root problem. Like I'm not gonna be the crazy Bitcoin friend now. I'm just gonna do the financial education thing. Like, are you spending more than you're earning and these
Yeah.
things?" And I found out for him it was all about status. So he goes out every night. He meets someone every day after work, maybe over lunch or something. Naturally, you go eat, you have a few drinks and stuff. I was like, well, why don't you just stay at home? And like, if you want to meet someone, ask them over. Like, you can buy beer for cheap in the
Yeah.
grocery store. If you even buy them in like the multi packs and stuff. In Austria, if you buy like the glass bottles, you get the returns if you bring them back, and like they're much cheaper than if you buy them individually. And just have a stack at home in your fridge. If they come over, which people will gladly do because no one really likes sitting for like 6 hours in a restaurant and spending way too much on food and drinks, and you can have a good time. You're gonna save some money. An absolutely worst case, maybe just stay at home a bit and enjoy the peace of mind, because when you get like 50, you're not really in the mood anymore to meet someone every other day. You're just glad if you can spend time at home. And he was like, why should I do this? Like, I'm missing out so much on life. So I think it's a constant battle
Yeah.
between how do I get more out of whatever I'm doing, investing, working, and then on the other hand, it's sort of this thing like, oh yeah, it's common, to meet up socially a lot of these things, and you're kind of the oddball if you just like to stay at home. So I'm always fascinated by these conversations because I actually don't need to bring up Bitcoin for him to realize, like, maybe putting stuff aside and waiting it out a bit is the better plan than actually consuming and overspending.
Yeah.
So there's always a bit of parallels there. Over here, we're just basically too stupid to realize that our currencies are also devaluating at a rapid pace.
Exactly, and that's why I deliberately mentioned on my spiritual path as well, and I still can recall the conversation I had on Bram Kanstein's the Bitcoin for Millennials podcast. I think we called it like the spiritual journey into Bitcoin, because it's so much more than only understanding what inflation is. You actually have to understand what you want out of life, right? It's so much more than only thinking about inflation and how to store your wealth. It's also your mindset. It's also your trauma. It's also who you want to be, how you want to show up in life. And if you don't understand, or if you don't think about these things or about these questions, who am I? What do I want and what do I need? You will probably end up making various choices, and that's okay. That's fine, because you have to learn from those choices. However, if I still talk to people that are in their 40s and in their 50s, and they still make those quote unquote poor choices, and therefore sell their Bitcoin, not because they think they should sell their Bitcoin for fiat, but because they believe they need the fiat for something they actually do not need. That's something completely different, right? It's not that they don't believe in Bitcoin. They just they don't actually believe in themselves. And that's a whole different story. That's more a story for psychologists, or like I said, for a spiritual journey or something.
Yeah, definitely. I was just looking up in the background the episode, and I had YouTube on light mode. That was quite that was also
Intense.
quite a journey. So yours was stop ignoring the spiritual side of Bitcoin with Brum.
Yes.
Quite an interesting episode, and I'll definitely link it in the show notes. but back to your educational part, the reason I also got interested in having you on is because I've seen loads of posts from your end on LinkedIn where you really wake up like the typical, how can we call the guy? Like the boomers who, they've got their house when it was like 10 grand, it's now worth 3 million. They've profited very heavily of the increase in fiat money and like liquidity and all of these things. And they just don't get Bitcoin. They don't spend a lot of time, but they like to reply. And you are constantly back and forth. Is that also a bit your persona? Like, do you enjoy having the confrontation and the conversation with people?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Like, if you go on a spiritual path, you will get to the nasty part. And in my trauma, there's something there. Like, I will never feel good enough, right? So some way, somehow, I want to be seen. And if someone does not see me for what I am, or does not see the value of the post that I've created, I will keep going. I will simply keep going. Like, everyone is like, yeah.
By the way, I'm exactly the same. Like, I was brought up so my mom, she was always quite, in German, you say you got hair on your teeth. So those are the kind of people, elbows out. And she always encouraged me, like, you got to have the last word. And this is even to me, like, I'm okay online because, I try to not be as intense. But in real life, I'm the same. I go like, okay, I just need to have the last word. Like, this is not sitting well with me. I can't go to bed if I don't say my point out loud.
Yeah,
but carry on, sorry.
Well, no, don't worry. It's fine. That's exactly what it is. And of course, like, so my journey, of course, also started on Twitter, right? So what do I do there? I like to engage. I like to share. That's who I am. I'm like an open book. I'm so high in my energy, and I'm always sharing. So what do I do on Twitter? I'm sharing and I'm sharing and sharing, and nothing actually happens. Of course, I share some beautiful stories about about me traveling the world and everyone what's going on, and like really, really cool and stuff like that. However, there are so many smart individuals on Twitter sharing so many smart threads and reports and scientific research, and like on all areas, it's all already there. So I felt like, okay, I cannot add anything here besides for my persona or some laughter or some humor or whatever. So I can keep doing that. However, what do I win with this? And when do I actually thrive? So I went back to LinkedIn because I already had a pretty large following base on LinkedIn due to my first company. But then I was still sharing in Dutch because it was only Dutch company. So it was me sharing about mindset, psychology, sales, and about whatever I was selling back then. So I thought, okay, what if I can be the gap? Because I know everyone on Twitter hates the boomer generation on LinkedIn, and it's a boomer platform and stuff like that. But I already had a relatively good following base. And I thought, if I just start sharing content in English and I share my view on the financial system, and then gradually, then slowly, I start talking about Bitcoin whenever they're ready, I thought. So I was sharing some posts. I think it was like 3 years ago. And when I do something, like, I have my mindset is in check. So I will do it every day. Every day I'm going to sit, I create a post. So I did. And I had no likes whatsoever. Nobody cared. Only like every now and then, and someone made fun of me. And that's an ego check there, because my first post in Dutch back then on LinkedIn were doing really well. Like, I like 100 likes or 30 likes, 50 likes, 60 likes, but like that type of stuff. Well, then at some moment in time, after 2 months of everyday posting, someone with a bigger followers base, he liked or responded, and that kicked things off. And then I started to like increase the quality of my posts. And then I just thought, okay, if I see something clever on Twitter, like an image, for example, I see an image and I use that image, and if I know from who it's from, I'm just gonna like tag this person, or I'm gonna share from who it is. But I will create my own spiritual linked text in it, like everything around Bitcoin and money, but then with a deeper layer underneath it. And as you develop your own type, your own writing style, people are going to like it. And now I was able to reach like lots and lots of people. And what I noticed on LinkedIn, I don't know if it's the same on Twitter, because I almost never there, but on LinkedIn, every time when I have like, my fans are always liking, then I go to 50 likes or 60 likes, and above 60 or 70, it's going to get shown to the haters. And then that stuff happens. and then I'm ready. So if I've been to the sauna, if I've meditated, if I've done all that stuff, I'm sitting and waiting for all those haters, and I'm just gonna keep replying, mostly with questions, sometimes a little bit annoyed, but I want to keep that conversation going on LinkedIn, because I know, let's be very clear here. If we stay in our bubble, we will not reach a lot of people. But now, if I see how many people I've reached through LinkedIn, because they all check those comments, they check the comments, they see the conversation, and they actually can, people that are a little bit connected to their heart, they feel the vibrations of those conversations, and they see, okay, I think Marc is right here. I don't know why, but I feel his energy is better than the one that is like making fun of him. So I get private messages all the time, DMs, and they all want to talk about crypto and scene. How do you educate people? And can you tell me more about what it is? Because I'm interested. So whenever I do this on LinkedIn, I have like on every post, I have like a link to a live event once a month. And people get together there, and from that, like, it's like a little smart sales channel. People then like the presentation that I give, and then afterwards, a few of those participants, they will end up in my community, and we talk about Bitcoin and finance only. It really feels like I'm making a difference, because those people were never into Bitcoin. Like, not for one, like, you can understand that if I get a conversation one-on-one with one of them, they don't even know what it is. Okay. So they have not a slightest clue about what Bitcoin is. So yeah, so that's the story of LinkedIn, actually.
Yeah, I like it. I'm actually also a big fan of LinkedIn. I must admit, I'm the typical like repost whatever I share on Twitter guy. I do the bare minimum of like maybe tagging like the right company or stuff. I should do more, but I really like LinkedIn for also other features where you can basically find anyone you want. So my day job, if I need to speak to media people, and if you work in Bitcoin, especially for a Bitcoin only company, and you approach the media, and also as a former journalist, I know how to approach them, but I also know the common struggles of. Off the top of my head, I know 10 journalists in 10 different newspapers or publishing houses who all want to write whatever I'm sending them, but then it's like the next boss, and then the editor-in-chief who needs to sign off on that. But this is where I use LinkedIn to then also try and find, someone in the same team, someone working there, trying to scout if they've already written about Bitcoin or other digital assets and these kind of things, and then slowly getting into it. And my experience has been it's actually easier to connect with people.
Yeah.
They're more used to getting a DM. They're more used to getting a comment. On Twitter, it's sometimes, or on X, it's sometimes a bit more hostile. So I love really that part. And the Bitcoin only content on LinkedIn is definitely like underappreciated. So if anyone likes engagement, or if they just like a lot of comments and likes, go on LinkedIn and
Yes.
start experimenting a bit, because you'll easily get it sorted.
And also, they all have their business cap on, like, so they are they almost are ready to pay already, because they know it's like it's business network only almost. And so for me, it's very easy, because I have a Bitcoin and financial platform. So that's the crypto and scene community, and then I have a premium community for the people that want more one-on-one time with me, right? So they are more wealthy most of the time, and they simply want more time and energy. And I also have like a Bitcoin for business. And because most of the people that are interested are entrepreneurs, or they are relatively high up in some hierarchical part of an organization. So it's also relatively easy to then ask, do you also want to talk about business? Do you perhaps want Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or do you perhaps want to accept Bitcoin as a payment? And because and mostly they say, well, I'm more interested in my own journey now, so I will become a member. But after they have been a member for like 6 months or 9 months, it's relatively easy to then ask, okay, shall we go to your company together and talk about Bitcoin there? And it's really warm to get those conversations going. So yes, I fully agree. It's of course, like, the downside, of course, is also there, because on LinkedIn I've written some articles, and I've written like Bitcoin for beginners, Bitcoin for intermediaries. And I can still recall when I was writing that, and I was like linking to videos on YouTube that I've uploaded as well. And when I did, I got blocked from LinkedIn right away. So for quote unquote selling illegal products or stuff like that. So I had some trouble there as well. So it's not only rainbows and butterflies, but what it actually is there are not so many people that have high quality content with regard to Bitcoin. So there's not so much competition. So for anyone listening, watching, if you want, I've created my company and my income, and it's relatively high, I would say, solely through LinkedIn on this point. So, and I've learned through Twitter. So I connect with real Bitcoiners on Twitter, and if I want someone in my podcast, I can reach out through Twitter, but through LinkedIn, that's how I make money. So and also I actually make a difference because I actually get to orange pill people that have never thought about Bitcoin before, like moms in their 40s, 50s, 60s, dads in their 60s, 70s even, and they like, okay, I'm too scared to go in the community. Can I pay a little bit more? Yes, okay, you can become a premium member. It's literally that easy. Of course, I've built a track record, so I build a followers base, and I also have a podcast where people can learn more if they don't trust me right away. That said, though, it's a really good entrance point to just keep on posting high quality content on LinkedIn.
I'm interested as a Bitcoiner. There are a few things in the community I am very much annoyed with. One of the things is I think you mentioned it before that you don't always have to be hyper on in these things. And another thing is sometimes I had this last week. I saw someone in Vienna actually. He was visiting, he's just passing through, and he went like, "Oh, I can't believe this guy's a Bitcoiner and he's charging for his consultancy or something." Well, why shouldn't he? He's putting in the work, and he should get a reward out of it. Yeah, but he has a lot of Bitcoin, like he can basically work for free. And I'm like, are you listening to yourself? He goes like, "Oh, but that's so fiat of you to request money for your services." I go like, you pay for everything. If you don't pay with something with like a good, you pay with your time. So naturally, if he's solving a problem, he should be getting rewarded. I'm fully on board with him. These Ponzi coaches and stuff. When I still used to work in journalism, I covered consumer tech and at one point social media. And then I got into this bubble with like all of these thrifters and fraudsters. Like if you pay upfront like 100K for a coaching for a year and then it's not going to get delivered, that's an issue. But like if you charge per hour or per session or something, like this is valuable work you're doing and you're hopefully solving a problem. And I've observed that this is happening as well sometimes online in the Bitcoin community and at events where they go like, I can't believe that they charge X amount for this service, or like they set up hardware wallets with people and charge like 50 euros. I go like, do you know how much it costs to go from A to B and then back your time there, getting everything ready? You're already in the loss if you charge 50 euros. So how is your relationship with like also offering a service? I guess both of it is you need to pay. And is there anything in you where you sometimes see in Bitcoin, like there's just certain things which we should stop doing and we should keep it a bit flowing and let people decide what they want to do?
This is such a good question. I love you for asking this question. This is actually what I think needs to be discussed. Okay, so first of all, I live my own life. I don't care about anyone's opinion ever. That's how I live my life always. And what I do actually is I think about it a little bit differently. So there are creating value. You can do this in multiple ways. So if we like go on this like mathematical, I have like a quote unquote rich client, and he wants to buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin, but we know he needs to...
I might know a good address if you want to do that.
So he needs to get like educated relatively quickly because he wants to buy, for example, within 2 weeks. So now I have to like create time in my schedule in the upcoming 2 weeks that makes me less free, and also locally dependent because I need to be with him for a couple of hours, right? So I ask him how important it is for him to do this within those 2 weeks. It's very important. And I ask him how much money, how much value he wants to like get into Bitcoin. So if he would make a mistake one way or the other, he would lose lots and lots of money, right? If he would make a mistake later on, he would lose even more money later on. And the The feelings he will get will be even worse because Bitcoin might be even more at that time. So he feels he lost even more. So if I would then charge 5,000 euros for 2 whole days because I help him to create a dream outcome, and he wants to pay me for it because I actually tell him, in return for those 5,000 euros, I will create this and this dream outcome. You can also do it more cheaply because you can become a member of my crypto and scene community, and you only have to pay $500 per year, and you have access to all the content, and you can even do it for free because you have content online on YouTube. BTC sessions has it all. Apparently, those people, they don't want to do this on their own. They don't understand it if they watch those videos, and they are afraid to make mistakes. This particular guy is in his 60s, right? So what he thinks is, okay, I've listened to the podcast of Mark. He seems clever. He seems trustworthy. So I hook him up. He asked me if I can do this. And I'm like, I can only do this for 5,000 euros because I don't have time otherwise, because I already have my time scheduled and I already make money within that time frame. So I have to disappoint someone else. And so you have to pay more for it. So I'm simply explaining how it works, economically speaking. Of course, I can also hook him up with someone who wants to do it for free. I can hook him up with someone who wants to do it for free, but he wants to do it with me. He actually wants to do it with me, and he does not care to pay me $5,000. So, and I'm really professional. So I'm like explaining literally every detail that I know of. And I even overperform with regard to the expectations that I've set. If you would sell something and you overperform and you agreed on the price up front, you will always be just fine. So now, with regard to the energy in the Bitcoin, like we need to save the world, we need to do it for free and yada yada. Of course, it's a very interesting story and it's a very idealistic vision. I love that vision as well because I help lots of people for free as well. People who can't afford me, I help them. But what do I notice as well? And Joel, this is very interesting. I've let so many people in my community the first year for free, and they did not do anything with it. It's the perception of value, right? It's free, so I don't care. I don't watch the videos. I don't buy the hardware wallet. I don't get my Bitcoin off the exchange because Mark says so, because I've never paid. I've never checked the videos. I don't go through that learning process myself. So I think really rational about this. I truly don't give what someone else does or does not do in return for their service. I know what I'm worth, right? I'm worth so much money because I have so much experience in life, and I'm also I create a beautiful process as well. So now you get to the value part. Sometimes people just don't want to do it alone. They just want to be together. So they know how to do it. They just want to make friends within a community. So if I then have a community and I tell you, like, you can be part of the community for $500. Sometimes someone says, yeah, well, I don't need the content. I just want to be part of your community, Mark. I like the energy. Well, pay for it. And you are welcome. Because it takes me a lot of time and energy to arrange a barbecue, to arrange live events, to arrange the live events on Zoom, because that's what I think you should do. If you sell something and you overperform with regard to the expectation you have set, with regard to that price, you will always win. That's why my community grows. That's why people that pay $5,000 for like a one-on-one service even like referral me to the next person that's rich. Take him. He's fun. He's clever. He's whatever. And it's not because I say so. It's because my customers say so. So I love the question, and I hope I can inspire people that listen or check this on YouTube or whatever. I hope they can find out for themselves. Don't worry about what other people say. They don't know your situation. If you want to become a 100% full-on Bitcoiner, you need to make money as well, unless you have like at least whatever. How much Bitcoin do you think you need if you want to like retire when you're 39?
I don't know. I mean, there's some guys who argue it's 10 years it's 0.1 Bitcoin. I think if you would have right now with current fiat price and trigger warning for everyone, you still need to value it in it to know how much you're getting.
Yeah.
I would say if you have 100 Bitcoin, you're pretty comfy. Like you're
Yes.
very much
Well,
comfy.
I don't have 100 Bitcoin, and I have
Neither.
kids, and I have dreams, and I want to live my life, and I love Bitcoin. I want to be working with on Bitcoin every second of the day, and so I need to like ask for something in return. And I
Hmm.
think that's really logical. And I don't actually care what the community might think of it, but I do believe that everyone has to play its role, and I do believe that that part of criticism is okay, because
Yep.
if I receive that criticism, it might do something with me, and it brings me further. So and perhaps we have a very intellectual debate about it, and makes me reconsider to ask a little bit less. That could be the
Hmm.
case. That
Hmm.
could actually be the case, and I'm always open to that part. But I just want to like people that want to come get into the space, that they are not going into, for example, like a shitcoin kind of industry to make more money, whereas they could make a lot of money in Bitcoin as well if they would do it properly.
Yeah, definitely. I think also one of these misconceptions I have, and I could be a bit biased because after being done with the media landscape, I freelanced for a lot of venture capital funds and, did the typical like media work and these things. And I know these guys, like they're not bad people. Of course, they also invest in shit like, Solana, these things, but they look at it and go like, hey, it's an easy return. Instead of waiting 10 years to clear the fund, we got to do it in 2. So it
Yeah,
makes our life more simple and a
yeah,
bit more cash in the bank. And in Bitcoin, there's such a big hate against venture capital and outside money. And everyone who sort of had that reality check, if you've ever worked in a startup, and I've freelanced in a few, I now work in one, unless you have a founder who's fucking rich or he has rich parents or he has a good network, it's very hard to grow fast quickly
yeah,
unless you get outside money and outside help. So there's so many of these beliefs where I go in the community, I go like, why do you care? If someone is willing to give like 10K Bitcoin um, to a startup to do lightning stuff, or he's willing to give them 10 Bitcoin just to, to have the seed money together to start the company, that's already helping the ecosystem. And if it's not even in Bitcoin and they're doing something else, but they find a way into Bitcoin, that's okay too. So sometimes I'm fascinated with these Twitter debates, like, literally sitting on my couch and like scrolling my phone and going like, how fucking dumb are you guys?
yeah, yeah.
But I think this is also part of the adoption thing again. Like people need to learn this, people need to see this, and it always separates a bit of the normies from like the extremist purists. And there's somewhere in the middle is reality. So I think it's always good to have that in mind as well.
Yeah, well said. And also, like the more you go in your own, if you go in your inner journey, so your spiritual growth, and you connect to your heart, you simply have to check with your organ, and it's your heart. It's the most smartest organ you have. And if my heart tells me go left because I need to for my family, for example, let's say I get into a situation that I need to do something really clever within a few weeks to, for example, just make it really, really weird, like to save my daughter. Do you think I care about like some type of moxie that tells me that it's not allowed to do something like it? No, of course not. So you have various degrees. Um, I do actually believe that it all plays a part in the end game eventually. So we need the absolute maxis. We need the shitcoiners as well. We need it all because everything eventually plays a role into where we need to go. And if you then talk about basic stuff, like if an investor needs to accept money, for example, in Ethereum, and he then afterwards, with that money, converts into Bitcoin or converts into real world value, and with that make the world a better place, of course he should do it, right? So there I I believe, like, if you think about sovereignty, like
Hmm.
I want to work with people that I want to work with, right? I don't
Hmm.
want to work with people I don't like. So I need a buffer so I can say no to people I dislike. I want to work from whenever and wherever I want. So that's also important. So that to me is financially sovereign. And I use Bitcoin. But I can imagine that if someone else wants to copy my strategy, that it's not easy to get to that part if you don't have the qualities yet and you don't
Hmm.
have the capital yet, like I have right now. So I can now act like, yes, just save everything in Bitcoin and perhaps a little bit in gold
Hmm.
for if you in case you're wrong. And perhaps this other person thinks like, I want to be like Mark. I want to have the same type of career. I have the same type of mindset, but I don't have parents that have money. I don't have money myself, and I have like a shit job. So perhaps I should do something clever in the short term in order to get there a little bit faster. I can try. Who am I to judge on that situation? Because I'm not that person. And I think if we would all consider that everyone has his own unique situation, we can, of course, help, we can educate, we can prevent them from making stupid mistakes. But I don't think we can be judgmental on someone who just tries to make money in whatever
Mm.
form by creating value for someone else. I think that's very, very, very rational and normal.
Most definitely. And I think, as you said, everyone's on their own journey. And there are lunatics out there who are not on social media and they're Bitcoiners. And then there's people like, for example, I've watched an episode of Fred Krueger last week, a bit of an older one, on another podcast, and he said, especially if you're young, like, sure, you can go all in Bitcoin. Like, it's not a big risk for you at this point. And even if it goes south, like, let's say 50% drop in one day, you're most likely gonna spend your last penny to get more Bitcoin at this point. But still have some cash reserves. You still live in the fiat world. Try to also enjoy life a bit. And sure, if you're older, you're maybe more established, you have like your diversified portfolio, it's very hard to get out of that and everything into Bitcoin. So I think everyone sort of has their approach of how they do stuff. And yeah, as the Bitcoin network is, working as long as you're playing according to the rules, if you do follow these rules, you can do whatever you want and don't need to worry what people say online.
Yes, and I want to keep everyone has to keep in mind. I was on a spiritual weekend in Sacarest. It's a beautiful valley in Spain, and I was there with 50 entrepreneurs, relatively successful entrepreneurs. And I think I was one of the two that actually understood Bitcoin. Okay, and they are already pretty far along in their awakening process. So they feel that there's something weird with the world, but they don't have a clue with regard to the money. They don't see the role of money in that. They see that money is nasty, but they don't think that it's like fiat money per se. They just think the concept money is nasty. So they actually envision a world where there is no money at all, that you're just exchanging value spiritually, right? So they really miss that part. So of course, I think I'm the one. I was there, so I was presenting Bitcoin in a way, and I can tell you they were not actually able to grasp it. A few of them, however, were interested though. So if I then would say to them that if they would adopt Bitcoin, they are not able to make money in the Bitcoin space because it's frowned upon to sell your services for too much cash because you need to be like more whatever. I don't think that's the right approach. So I love the Maxis for being there because they teach me. I'm ready to accept everything that they say, and whenever they say something about me, even though they don't mean me because they don't know me, but they say something about the person and the things that I do, I use that as fuel and I use it as proper feedback. However, I cannot like use that type of feedback to the next layer because the next layer is not there yet, not even close. So I need to be way more friendly and I need to be way more patient as well to keep talking in fiat terms still to get them slowly into Bitcoin with 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5%. And then I'm adding value to the network. I'm adding value to the world because we get closer to that gradually than suddenly part. Because there are people there, they are really successful and they have lots of capital still in fiat. So if I would go all full maxia on them, they would not consider 1% going into Bitcoin. But now, because I have used some language that they understand, they are interested to become a member in my community, then get educated, and perhaps in 2 or 3 years, perhaps they put in 10% into Bitcoin. Not right now. Not right now. So I think we should all take this with us before we judge others, and also, like you, creating this podcast every time. There goes so much time, energy, and effort in doing this. Just be grateful that so many people are willing to exchange scarce time and resources into adding energy into the Bitcoin network because that's what you're doing. And the way and the what and the how, I truly don't give.
Yeah, I think that's a good bridge over into the closing segment of the show, because
Yes.
I also don't want to take out too much time, knowing that you have kids and stuff.
Yeah.
We always close out the show with a little bit of a challenge for our guests, because we want to prove that all roads lead back to Bitcoin. So I'm now going to give you a word or a phrase, and you have to come up with a way how this associates back to Bitcoin. And with you being from the Netherlands, and I'm only using these words because CryptoTag last time sent me a very nice personalized plate, and I got some waffles with them. How does stroopwafel, is that the right way to say it?
Yeah.
Okay, how does that lead back to Bitcoin?
Oh man, you asked the right person. Like my first company
Are you a
is,
stroopwafel Maxi or
yes,
what?
my first company is called Stroopwafel Effect, and that's also that I. So for me, this is relatively easy. The way how my mind works, and I think it's aligned with with the Bitcoin thesis, is whenever you do sales, for example, in the Netherlands back in the day, you would always bring with you stroopwafels.
Hmm.
Why? Because you create the energy that you're not coming there or visiting there to get value. You are coming to give value. So to shift your mindset into, no, I want to sell something, instead of, no, I want to give something first. Not only it's symbolic, right? The stroopwafels are symbolic. I come to give value, and then I'm going to be value for you. So use me in this hour. Use me to better your life or to increase everything that you want to increase. And then afterwards, we perhaps have a value exchange because you want to pay me to get more of me. So this whole psychological mindset shift with stroopwafels, I think we can relate that to Bitcoin as well, because it's a low time preference thing. You need to like invest first to buy all those stroopwafels, because you can imagine if you do like 9 sales calls a week, you have to
Hmm.
go to the bakery relatively often because you want to have high quality stroopwafels. And that also, you don't want to have the ones from the supermarket. You want to
Hmm.
have the ones from the bakery, because if they take a bite when you have your coffee moment, they want to actually go like, wow, this is amazing. And now they get connected not only to the stroopwafel but also to you. And I think that low time preference energy, that mindset shift with regard to the sales process, like, no, you're not going to that customer to get value, you're going to that customer to give value. I think that Bitcoin, the low time preference part, the value part, is truly connected to the stroopwafel mindset that we have in the Netherlands as well. Because let's be honest, if Bitcoin is one thing, and if it taught one thing to anyone, it's like to have a low time preference energy. So you first think about about your relationships. How can I help this other person? Because you know, if you help that other person first, you will get the help whenever you need it. And that's how we, I think, embrace Bitcoin as well. Bitcoin is that instrument where we put our economic output in so that we can use it later whenever we think we need it to live a happy life.
That's the perfect ending. Mark, if people want to follow you on social or get in contact with you, what's the best place to get you?
Just hook me up on LinkedIn. Like, I'm also on Twitter. I love Twitter, but like I said, I don't have an edge on Twitter. I just add some energy there, and I like to be in conversations. But on LinkedIn, I'm posting every day. I'm responding every day. So, and if you're Dutch, if for whatever reason you're listening to this podcast and you're Dutch, make sure to check out the Mark My Word Show. Mark with a C, of course. The Mark My Word Show. It's a Dutch podcast where we talk about Bitcoin and finance. Every week we have an episode. So I think that that should be it.
Nice, perfect. Thanks for your valuable time, Mark. It was really a blast, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Amsterdam. And also thanks to the valuable time of our listeners, and you guys know the drill. Stay curious.